At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
It is a new day for 911 professionals. They have gone from the most important person you will never see to the most vital piece of public safety. Truth be told, they always have been. The curtain has been pulled back, and they are sharing their stories. Welcome to Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday, by Ricardo Martinez II, and narrated by myself, Ricardo Martinez II, and distributed by Beacon Audio Books. Copyright 2023. That's right, everyone. Finally, I can let everyone know the rumors are true. Imagine Listening, Your Worst Days, Our Everyday is now available as an audiobook on Audible, and it's a long time coming. Very excited. Not a lot of authors get the opportunity to voice their own book, but I had the honor and privilege to do so. So thank you to Beacon Audio Books, as well as my publisher, Titled Town Publishing, for everything, but especially all of you for making the I Am 911 movement, as well as Imagine Listening, what it is today. I appreciate you all more than you know. So go ahead, head out, stream it, download it, however you consume your audiobooks. Imagine Listening is now available. According to the IAED, the average 911 call center is understaffed by 30%. This nationwide staffing crisis, combined with rising call volumes, is creating an environment that makes one of the toughest jobs on earth even tougher. As next-generation data and tools emerge, it's crucial that vendors build with these challenges in mind, not just meeting the needs of the telecommunicator, but helping to mitigate challenges presented by staffing shortages. That's why Prepared Built Assist, a platform that's been called a game changer by users and the first ever assistive 911 platform. Prepared Assist processes call audio to give you a live transcript, while AI pulls insights from the call, enabling you to two-click copy and paste key information like addresses, suspect descriptions, and more directly into CAD. Prepared Assist also translates text and audio so that you can communicate with non-English callers without an interpreter. Speaking of text, Assist gives you the ability to send outbound text to callers, so you can cut down the time you spend on 911 hangups and communicate with anyone that can't speak. All of these tools are centralized on a single screen, so you don't have to look in a million places to find all the right information or significantly alter your workflow when you adopt the platform. Prepared Assist is built for 911. Visit prepared911.com/assist to learn more and see the platform in action. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, True Stories from the 911 Dispatchers Who Live Them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast. Thank you so very much, whether it be on Patreon, Circle, or Facebook. I appreciate you more than you know, but especially all of you who are here watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. I appreciate it. There is so much stuff that is going on, a lot of amazing episodes, great content going out. And I just recently actually posted a short TikTok and an Instagram reel of, I'll just say this really quick. It's a quick depiction of what happens when you say the Q word in dispatch. And if you are currently sitting in dispatch listening to this right now, I apologize for saying the word quiet. That's right. I said it. I said that word because basically it's like tempting fate. When you say that word, everything ends up going to hell, or at least it seems like it's going to hell. Maybe it's just super busy. If not that, check outside. It might be a full moon. But either way, the video it shows actually a pro wrestler coming down the ramp, all super happy. And it's marked down there as, that one dispatcher who ends up tempting fate testing fate rather, by saying the word quiet. And then another wrestler comes out with a steel chair and just starts beating him with it. And that wrestler is the depiction of the Q word coming in, because that's kind of how it feels sometimes. And then the Q word just dances and goes off. And that's it. Make sure to check that one out on any of the social media platforms that I have. But I thought that was hilarious. Put that out there, because it is truly a depiction of what happens when you say the word quiet and you're in dispatch, or really any profession that's high stress like that. There's a lot of classes that I'm going to be teaching, and going to different dispatch centers, but also going to conferences here pretty soon. So look out for all of that stuff. And I'm excited to be here with all of you, but also to have my guest on today. Her name is Deb, and she is a psychiatric clinician, also a 911 dispatcher, and a licensed EMT. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Well, I was just watching that GIF that you shared, and I was like, if you said all the keywords just now, I would have been so mad. I would have been like that skeleton guy, and I was looking for his name. But Buster Potamus has now found a squeaky ball, so I apologize.
Buster Potamus.
Yes, that's my dog.
I love that. I love that name.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, yes, we'll play Tuk Tuk a little bit. Okay.
It is all good.
He knows I'm on camera, so
he's like, pay attention to me. Pay attention.
Okay.
So the video, you said that you saw it and that you would be, what was that?
Yeah,
that you would be pissed off?
I would be dancing on top of you with a metal chair first. There's like people just walk in and they shout that word, and you're like, oh, why did you do that? And it always it follows through every time. This is tried and true. It should be studied. It should, like, I feel like it happens too randomly to be studied, but still,
I mean, it does happen. And sometimes when you speak things out into the universe, whether it's in dispatch or, your paramedic, fire, EMS, or even, whichever profession that's real high stress level like that, stuff seems to happen. And I'll tell you this really quick as we're getting into the beginning of your story and everything. My last shift in dispatch, the very last call I took, I'm sitting on radios, and my coworkers are like, we're already going to be towards the end of your dispatch career, man. Like, this is it. And of course I'm feeling kind of emotional, right? But I said, there's one type of call that I have never taken. And they start chuckling. They're like, don't say it.
You did it to yourself. I know,
right?
I don't feel bad for you.
So I end up saying it out loud. I said I've never had the opportunity to take a medical and translate Spanish before. And I just started laughing because I'm on radio. So I'm not picking up the phone or anything. And then the phone rings. There's like 25 minutes left of my last shift ever. And the phone rings and I hear un momento. I was like, no, like, these guys have to be joking with me. And my coworker, Jill, puts the phone down and she stands up and she starts laughing and she goes, Ricardo, this is for you. And I said, are you for real? Are you serious? And she goes, no, I am serious. It's just too perfect. And yeah, that's what it ended up being. It was a
Mhm.
medical and I had to translate Spanish.
Yep. Yep. Well, you did it, and I don't feel bad for you.
Oh, you crack me up. Well, I am excited to have you on. We next week, you and I, along with Jeremy Meyer, are going to be doing a DRT episode, a Dispatchers Roundtable, and it's going to be on ADHD and 911. But I wanted to have you on first to be able to find out more about you, what you do,
Mm.
and just continue through, your story and then transitioning into what it is that you're doing now. So how did you get into public safety to begin with?
I started working in security for Foxwoods, and then I ended up moving to Western Massachusetts, and I worked for I'm pointing to it like you can see where Western Mass is. But I worked for Six Flags, and at Six Flags, I really did not want to be in dispatch. I did not want to get behind the console. I wanted to be in security. We got to ride buggies, and it was cool. And I got to ride the rides every morning. It was awesome. They just needed test riders, so a lot of the employees would jump on sometimes. So,
Well,
so yeah, Six Flags is awesome. It was actually a really fun place to work. And
was the
so
Batman ride and the Superman ride they
yeah,
have?
yeah, they have. I don't know what they have right now, but this was back in 2001.
Hmm.
So in 2001, at that park, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but at that park, they at the end of that year, something went faulty with the Superman ride, and the brakes failed in this while 2 trains were operating. And so, like, when I was in dispatch, and I had 2 other dispatchers with me. That's how busy Six Flags is. So, and we did, like, rest breaks, we did EMS, calls and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But and we had a great EMS team back in 2001, it was awesome. And, but the 2 trains actually crashed together. I don't remember how fast it was going, but, it ended up causing, like, pretty much like 37 broken noses, something like that. Like, and I ended up having to call in like 37 ambulances. So because
Whoa.
everybody, yeah. So and I remember it's so weird the things that you remember from back then, but like
Right.
I remember getting through it by myself. So the 2 other dispatchers that were working were EMTs, so they went. So I was sitting there by myself, and I did the entire park. I handled everything in the park by myself. So, and there was no one to even give me a bathroom break for hours. Like, I could not stand up. Like, so it was intense, and it really broke me into. And I know it's Six Flags and not 911, but it wasn't too far off, to be honest, because after I ended up working in 911 for a couple of decades, like you said. So, but it wasn't too far off, and it was a good start. They did give me an award for it, and I remember at the award ceremony, I showed up with rubber duckies on my socks, which they called out right on the stage. So those were not regulation socks, I was told. So it was like, you know what, keep it light.
Hey, I mean, that's pretty awesome and
Yeah.
also very memorable. So
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
is excellent.
Yeah. So no one was seriously injured, and there was
Mhm.
absolutely no fault made to the park. The park did everything they were supposed to do. All the engineers they were awesome. They really did their jobs very well. Back in 2001, I feel like when I worked there, it was run very well. And I learned a lot from them. So that's where I
Wow.
started. I ended up going to fire dispatch only in 2005. And on my first day in 911, um, I can, I mean, I'll get to that when you ask, I guess. I'll wait.
No, 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 go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
listening. Go ahead.
So
This is good.
yeah, I had a really awesome trainer. His name's John.
Mhm.
And John, he's very patient. He's very cool on the radio. Doesn't really react to anything. He doesn't engage in drama. He doesn't stress really about anything. And it's funny because now here we are in 2024. We both have therapy dogs that like are trained to work in the system. So he trained me, and on my first day, unfortunately, I had a fatal. It was a drowning, and I believe he was a teenager, and I had to land Lifestar, and I messed up the call. I didn't send the right amount of fire departments. They wanted all 4 to go to a water call, but I'll tell you, those firemen did not give me a hard time. They just got in their trucks and went. And they told me what, like how I could improve later, and they weren't rude about it. They were awesome. I still am friends with a couple of them. And I think, that was, that being my first day cleared in 911 was it really made me prepared for everything because I had to land in Connecticut we call it Lifestar or
Mhm.
a life flight. So I had to set that all up, and I was by myself. Like there's no other dispatcher. It was 911 and the fire department I would dispatch, and EMS. So I didn't dispatch the police department, but it was in the police department. The dispatch center was in the police department. So the police officers were there and I knew them, but I didn't dispatch them. So that was my first day.
What?
Yeah. And I mean, I had worked with someone that at the time, I mean, he had been there for 20 years and he was like, I've never had to land Lifestar. And you did it on your first day. And I was like, so, I was
Wow.
upset about it. I was very, distraught. And I was like, what if I didn't mess up the call, would I have gotten there in time to save him? I did a lot of what ifs if I could have done, and I and my trainer actually, it was like his first day off in forever, and he came in anyway and sat with me and was like, this was not bad. Like you did good for your first day, and not many people could have done this. And he was very clear that it was not my emergency and that I could go home and see my family and everyone was safe. And so I think from there on, he helped me with that coping skill of like just understanding there's a difference between what's happening on the phone and what's happening in front of me.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things for us, right, in this profession when we take a call like that, and no matter what happens, sometimes we end up blaming ourselves.
Yeah.
Because of just like how you were saying, if I would have done something different, or maybe my line of questioning would have been different, would there have been a different outcome? And it's always good as well to have those out in the field end up giving you that constructive criticism. However, in a way that is not like being crappy about it, right? Like
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not because then there's nothing that anyone can tell you that is gonna make you feel worse than you already feel, because you're already like, kind of beating yourself up about it.
Hmm.
And it's a hard thing to learn, but when you have a good support system and you have folks that are there that are wanting to give you, those pointers, but do it the right way,
Mm,
you feel like, I'm gonna continue doing this. Like things are gonna
mhm.
continue going. Now, you said this was your first day, but this is your first day on your own?
On my own. Yeah. My first day
Wow.
cleared from training. Yep. And
Way
and
to
and
welcome
there
to
were
dispatch.
yeah, and there were no dispatchers. Like it was one dispatcher. It's a small town, so it's one dispatcher for 911, EMS, and fire. And the closest thing I had to a partner would be a town over, and that person was one dispatcher at that time too. So they had 2 fire departments they dispatched. So, and I know, like, there have been times when I was working alone in that dispatch center. I worked there per diem for probably about 2 years before I got hired full time at a different place. And so there were times where that dispatcher would help me with certain things from his, because we could, with mutual aid, we had to be able to dispatch for each other.
Mhm.
So he would help me with things because like I didn't always know everything. And I wasn't coming from the fire department. I was
Right.
not coming from EMS. I wasn't coming as a police officer to come into dispatch and dispatch. I didn't have any experience in this. I have no one in my family that's in law enforcement or in public safety. This was not the, coffee table conversation in my family. This was something that I took on and I did by myself. So, and I find that people that have that in their family, or like they have friends or something, or they are in the fire department and the police department, they have a different view of how to dispatch
Right.
right from the beginning when they sit down. And so I was always a dispatcher. I was, like, and I became an EMT eventually, but I always separated the two. Those are two different things, so.
So coming from what you did over at Six Flags and then moving over into this other side here, I mean, what was the difference there? Like how did I mean, of course, you're not getting to ride the rides, right? But
Ah, yeah,
some of those higher priority calls are like a roller coaster of emotion.
yeah.
So, you go from where you were at over at Six Flags, and now you're over here and you're going through training and everything. Were there any moments where you were just kind of surprised or like even overwhelmed, like right when you're walking in for that first day to start your training? Were you
Mhm.
kind of freaking out a little bit, or were you just like ready to
Um,
go because you kind
oh
of
no,
had this
yeah,
experience already?
yeah, no. I have ADHD, so nothing is happening that's not right in front of my face. So I like thinking about the future is like,
Yeah.
I'm very much concentrated on, did I put my shoes on? Are my pants on the right way? Like,
Gotcha.
and so
Okay.
like, if I walk into a place like this for the first day, part of the reason I think I'm so successful, and I think a lot of people have ADHD in dispatch and in EMS and fire and police, I think they have it and they are so successful because they can completely separate what the long-term consequence or long-term outcome is going to be.
Mhm.
And that delayed, oh gosh, I'm losing the word, but not consequence and not gratification, but it's like a delayed response of
Mhm.
the different things that are going to happen are, basically, that is not a part of our thought system when we are helping people or when we're in the desk or on the desk that day. So I think that I walked in like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going? I need coffee."
And
Like,
you were just ready to go.
yeah, yeah. And I think like I had been trained for a while, like
Mhm.
they were very thorough in making sure that I was ready. I sat with multiple people, not just John, but I think Corey is still there, which I think he hated me to begin with, but we're good now. Pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you when you got in there and all, did you or how about this? Did you have a moment, whether it be in the beginning or after this call, with the drowning and all, um, was there a moment that you can remember where you felt like, "You know what? I'm in the right place. Like,
Yeah.
this
It was
is this
immediate.
is where I was meant to be."
That was from the beginning. I was like, this is
Mhm.
just very natural for me. I should be here. And it was, and even knowing that I didn't make the right decisions with certain things, like here in southeastern Connecticut, firemen are kind of they're picky, tricky about. I don't think they're picky or tricky. It's really more like they are very specific about how to send them to calls,
Mhm.
and they were so calm and understanding about my mistake that it really helped me to build confidence in it's okay to say that you made a mistake. It's okay.
I love that.
Like, it's okay to say to them, "Oh, okay, I'm learning." And I think honestly, as a female coming in with no experience in the system, um, that's another part where they're like, "Oh, who's this?" They used to call me Bubbles, I think.
Bubbles.
Yeah, because 'cause I'd be like, "Roger."
So just like a bubbly, like, high-pitched voice, so
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, and the other thing I think is important to bring up about starting in dispatch or in public safety as a female is especially if you take care of yourself and like you are confident and that I mean I don't like to say I'm pretty, but that's what I they used to say, you're a pretty girl in public safety, people are going to talk about you. And that is, oh, so true. There are still people that have ideas about me that are just not true. And okay, like I don't know what else
Right.
to say. So that part I think was another part that I did not see coming. I did not think that anyone would care who I was, what I looked like, and all they would care about was how I did my job. And so I focused on how to do my job,
Yeah.
you know, and that was very important to me then. But I was also like 22, 23 like I was young when I started. So um I was also like, typical 22, 23-year-old, just looking for friends and wanting to go out and meet new people and all those things.
It's also it's a different beast when you're going out and you're hanging with that public safety family as well, right?
Mm, mhm.
There's some differences, but also, if you don't come from a public safety, which I didn't either, I jumped in green, um, hanging out with officers afterwards, and I remember one time specifically, and this happened to me, but this also happened to my brother when I brought him to hang out with us to play pool at one of the officers' houses, that, I was standing there nursing a beer, and I remember one of the officers goes, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I'm I'm drinking with a bunch of cops, like, I don't this is
Yeah,
weird."
yeah,
They're like, "We're human too, we're people just like you." I was like, "I know."
yeah,
I said,
yeah,
"This is just it's different." But
yeah.
I understand what you're saying as well about, coming in and, and having some folks have those, that misconception or just whatever perceived notions right off
Mm,
the bat, and you're like, "No,
mhm.
this is not who I am or what I do."
Mhm.
And so, but yeah, you focus on the profession, and
Mhm.
you do what you do, and you let all of that speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you end up, how about the training? Let's go back really quick. How was the training when you ended up moving over versus where you were at Six Flags? Because
Yeah.
I
What
imagine the
a
training is a little different,
Yeah,
maybe.
well, yeah, they kinda just threw you on the desk at Six Flags. They were like, "Oh, that
Here's
line
a
does that,
here's
that line does that.
yeah.
Have a good day." It was like, I think I was making $8 an hour. It's cute. But, um, I'd rather talk about if it's okay, I'd rather talk
Mhm.
about the difference in training in fire dispatch and police dispatch and
Yeah, yeah, of course.
moving municipalities.
Mhm.
So, I came from a place that had, like the small town that I started in, which is the town I'm from, I knew most of the back roads. I knew the locations, like so, and I grew up in this area, so I knew many of the towns, and so I had that going for me. So if there's anybody out there that's looking to get into dispatch, I think the most important thing that you can start with is geography because you are always going to need to know where,
Of
and
course.
and it's
Yeah.
I mean I used to work with people that literally they could tell you the southeast side of the house has one broken shutter and they painted it in 1964 and like you're like, what? Like, so, and
Right.
this is Connecticut. There's a lot of houses, right? Like, but what I'll say is there was a big difference when I went to a different municipality a few years later. I ended up getting hired for a police department. It would be 911 police, fire, and EMS. So when I started working for 911 police, fire, and EMS, that was for, and I can share the name if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's Waterford Police Department in Waterford, Connecticut, and, so I worked for, their municipality, and I cannot say enough good things about their training process. They took it so seriously. They broke down every little thing. They had I mean, they so that was the first time I had ever heard of APCO,
Oh.
and I became, we were in Power Phone before, and I think we had I forget, I think it was the EPCO, EMD cards and stuff, and, like, learning all of that, learning the law enforcement, learning what an inference is. Like, just I had a trainer that had been working there for 20 years. Her name is Lori Lewis, and she works for APCO. And she is I think she works for APCO or does classes for APCO now. But she was absolutely the most knowledgeable, patient, kind human that I could have ever come across in public safety. Like, I got so lucky to have a trainer that really embraced me as almost like a daughter. Like she really taught me so much about not just like dispatching and what's important, how to prioritize things correctly, what they're looking for, and she taught me. I mentioned that I knew that I could say I made a mistake. Like in between these two agencies, I went to a different agency that it was not okay to make a mistake, and I would get written up and someone was out to get me. Like so it's a little backwards. I'd rather not focus on it, but
Right.
I kind of like it kind of damaged my train of thought in admitting that I did something wrong because I was gonna lose my job. And I remember I had a sergeant that was really awesome too, Sergeant Bellows, and he sat down with me one day. I messed something up and he goes, why can't you just say that you did it wrong? What's wrong? And I said, well, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my job. And he goes, oh, you're fine. You're not gonna lose your job. Just tell me what you did wrong. So from then on, I got programmed and trained to call them first before anyone else. I would always call the sergeant for the police department first because they ran the dispatch center technically. So I would always call the sergeant and say, "I messed up. Sorry. I know I did wrong. I won't do it again." and and like sometimes they were like, even if I thought that I messed up, I didn't. Like they were like, ah, that's not that bad. We'll handle that. Because my mess ups really weren't that big of a deal. For the most part. I'm not going to talk about the time I missed a stolen car. I
Well,
was very,
I
very pregnant. Yeah,
oh, so you had the prego brain going.
yeah, I did. I definitely did. Yes.
I think that, one of the good things, especially the way you're saying it and all as well, that, you've got folks that, they allow you to feel comfortable in those mistakes. Because like you're saying, yeah, a lot of people sometimes won't say or whatever, or are afraid to say anything because they might be afraid of losing their job, right? But also, it's a lesson to be learned from a lot of these things. So I think with the fact that they were telling you, just tell us, just say it, I think in a way that also continues to build that confidence, but also feeling comfortable in the center that you're at, because
Yeah.
anyone new who comes in, let's say, you were there and someone was coming in to do a sit along because they want to see if this is what they want to get into before actually, going to the interview and the training and all of that. They come in for a sit along and they start asking you questions, and you let them in on that part as well. That's going to be, you're kind of recruiting at the same time by saying some of these good things and those resources that are there, so that they won't feel so afraid when they're coming in. I mean, they're probably gonna feel afraid, right? But
Mhm.
they won't feel that way when it comes to some of these mistakes, because they know that they have a good support system there for it.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we start to really hone in and focus on like how to communicate with one another on a level that is more productive,
Mhm.
and less about our feelings and less about our, I don't know if butt hurts,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're, yeah, what you did sucked, like, and just being like, well, I'm not having the best time right now in my own life, and like, and my mom's sick and my dog doesn't look great, and I'm worried about that, and then you just took this out on me, like, and being
Yeah.
able to say that. I've actually said that to a fireman before, and he took a step back and took a breath and was like, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were going through that." And I said, "Well, it's very important that you understand that dispatchers are human, and we're not just a voice behind the phone or the radio. I have a
Yes.
whole life. I have a whole life of things that I do that are not dispatching, right? Like, and I don't deserve that. I don't deserve the snappiness on the radio, and I can't handle it right now. So I'm going to address it." And I mean, that was well on to my career. They knew me well enough to know that if I said something like that to them, I wasn't just being overreactive or dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different personalities when it comes to, we're all like alpha people, like,
Yes.
but then there's also, so that's, we think we're all alpha, but there's a ton of beta people in dispatch and, well, not dispatch, but like public safety as a whole,
Yeah.
but they're pretending to be alpha because they think they have to be.
Right, that's another
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So I mean, it's complicated, man.
Yeah. It's like someone's, profile status. It's
It's a
complicated.
difficult, yeah, it's a difficult, it's a difficult population, honestly, like, as a therapist now,
Yeah.
looking at the population, looking at other therapists and how they're treating this population, like, that's where I look at it and go, "Oh, oh, you can't say that. Don't say that." Like, sometimes they'll say things like, "Oh, did you have a quiet night?
Oh, yeah, exactly, right there.
Was it busy?" Right? Oh,
How how important, as we're talking about this and kind of understanding each other, how important do you think it is for all the disciplines of public safety to kind of do a sit along or ride along with each other, so that they can kind of bridge that gap and understand what each discipline does?
yeah. So, it's tricky because I think, um I think the fire department knows what the police department does, and the police department knows the fire department does. Like, they go to calls together. I
Right.
think, and EMS goes to everything, right? Like, but I think dispatchers getting out there is, it's important because they can see what's going on in person, right? And so we talk about, like having ride along and safety and things like that. We want to make sure that everybody's safe. So it really depends on where you are and the call volume and everything. And there are some centers that really just have call takers. They have radio dispatchers, like, and there are people that have no interest in going out in the field whatsoever. They're like, "Oh no, I go into offices. I don't go into calls. I don't,
Right.
I don't do police cars." Right. Like, so,
But it's
and I
so
don't blame them
fun
either.
though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for us, for you and I, it might be, right? Like, but
Right, yeah, it can be.
there's other people that just know themselves well enough to know that they don't want to see trauma,
Yeah,
and that's
and
okay.
that's good. Yeah, no, that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
I mean,
about the other 3 coming into dispatch though, to understand
coming
what
into
dispatch
dispatch. Oh,
does?
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's important, right? It's so important that they see how many different hands start moving. What happens, this is what happens, I know, because I've had people try to do this to try to understand us better, because they did have a lot of effort in that town to make sure everybody was getting along well. And you know what happens is that we have a queue, or like a keyword shift, where they come in and they're like, you guys don't really do anything at all. And we're like, yes, we do. So,
right. Someone say
like,
quiet. It's going to
yeah,
go to hell now.
yeah, I know. But then when you try to force it on the universe, it's like, no.
Right. Like, nope.
Yeah. Now you're just going to lose
Not
your
gonna
voice
happen.
instead. It's going to be like some weird Mercury's and lemonade, and I'll lose my voice instead of like a quiet shift at work.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is, you're correct. That sometimes when they come in, and it happened more so towards the end of my dispatch career, where like the sheriff's department or city PDs or whichever would have folks come in and sit with us for like an hour or something, and nothing would happen, and they're just,
I know.
talking
Like,
crap
oh,
about us or
yeah,
whatever.
I know.
Like, you guys are just
I
chilling
know.
watching Netflix. We're like, no,
No.
this is not this is not a true depiction of what goes on here.
Yeah.
And there was one time that I can remember that I was in dispatch where officers came in to help us because we had crazy weather going on. There's trees down, wires down, all of that. And all they were doing was simply calling in those tree calls to the road commission. And they lasted an hour. And
Yeah,
they were
but no,
wanting to
they
get the
want
hell out.
anything to do with it. No, they
Yeah.
do. Especially,
No.
I think, yeah, and I think the police officers are a little more with at least here.
Mhm.
I feel like they are more in tune with what we're doing because they know how much we're doing for them, and
Yes.
they know how complicated that's going to be, and they know what they're asking of us all the time. But I think it's hard. It's and I don't mean to pick on the firemen, but it's hard for them. It's hard for them to see because firemen are different. You dispatch them, they go, and they check in, right? Police
Yeah.
officers call you and they're like, "Can you find the sister's uncle of this person and then also enter 15 VINs for me, please?"
Right.
And firemen don't have to do that with us. We don't have to do anything extra for them. We're not cleaning their equipment. We're not wrapping up hoses for them. Like we're not doing any of their casework for them. Like, so it's a totally different relationship that you have with those two sections, like, um and I think like they're them coming in and sitting down and seeing the firemen definitely I think would benefit when it's busy, right? Like, especially when the
Right.
police department's busy, because and in my dispatch center, like I said, we had two. Well, I don't know if I said this or not, but we usually had two dispatchers. One would cover the fire radio and 911, and then the other
Mhm.
dispatcher was just police, all police, like police radio, police phones, and then they would back up 911 if that person were on 911. So it was, I mean, usually it was a fire dispatcher that had a little more time because the police department they activate themselves for things. The fire
Right.
department very rarely activates themselves for things. So that's where it was just a difference in call volume. That's all. Like, so a lot of times the fire dispatcher would back up the police dispatcher. And that's just the way that our town worked. I'm sure there's many, many, many places where the fire department is much busier than the police department. I don't know, like, but that's just my experience of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like it was the same with us. We would have our central dispatch. We had 3 on working on the floor. That was our minimum. On the weekends there was 4 of us,
Mhm.
and we were 12-hour shifts, and we did it all. Police, fire, and EMS. But it was like that as well.
Mhm.
I think the
Mhm.
good thing for my center was that we had folks that worked in dispatch that were also volunteer fire or were also working in EMS. So the only thing that was hard for them sometimes, especially in the beginning, was they were trying to give out instruction over the phone. And I remember one guy after the call was like, bro, a couple of those parts, and they said, well, that's what we do when we're on scene. And I said, I get it. We have different policies and procedures in the center. So
Yeah.
you got to watch out how you say it, because now you're also on a recorded line, and if
Yeah.
something is said, it's a
Yep.
liability is all I'm saying. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You
something
know,
to learn.
funny that you say open line, or a recorded line. I was thinking about,
Mhm.
I had an open mic once, and thankfully my open mic, me and Lori, my trainer, and she was like the admin, training, like, supervisor basically for dispatch, and she worked pretty much day shift, but she took a lot of overtime, so I worked with her a lot. And, so we had an open mic on accident, and, we were talking about Harry Potter. It was I was like, we had to replay it back, and we're like, "Oh, thank goodness we are children." or not children, but either moms. We're both mothers. Yeah. So
Right. Yeah.
that's the other thing. I was like, whew, man, there are other times I would not have had to have an open mic.
Oh, yeah,
You ever get
it
stuck? Like you think, what did I say? How long did I have that line open on the phone?
right, exactly. Yeah. I remember as just really quick as we're talking about open lines and such,
Yeah.
there was someone who was training and I was on phones with them and they went to say something as they were putting the handset down and I don't remember what it was that they said, but I said, "That person hung up, right?" And they said, "Yeah, they hung up already, as I was putting or before I put the phone down and hung up myself." And I said, "Okay." I said, "The only reason I'm asking is because even if they hang up and your handset is up, it's a hot mic. It's going to record." And they said, "No, that's
Yeah.
not, you're just
Yeah.
messing
Yep.
with me."
No,
So
that happened to us too. Yeah.
yeah, so I pick up the phone and I just started saying some random BS and then I put it down and I said, "Hit the replay." And they just went,
No. How many times have I done that? Oh my gosh, who's listening?
right, yeah. So for those who are watching and listening, especially those who watch that are from the general public,
Mm,
we have recorders, excuse me, that record all of, the
everything.
traffic and everything. So we
It's not
always
even just
tell
that.
people, like, if you don't want it out in the news, don't say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, at my center, we were recorded on video. Like, there was video recording of us the whole time because
Oh, no
that's the
way.
best. Well, we were not in the police department, so it's the best way for the police department to make sure we're safe. And
Oh, okay,
I
that
don't
makes
disagree
sense.
with that. I don't disagree
Yeah,
with that. I think the video needs to be there.
that
Like, I
makes
think
sense.
if you're going to be recorded, then be recorded doing everything you do. Of course,
There you go.
like, and that's where like I think when the police officers were kind of under fire in the past few years and they had to wear body cams, I was like, good, finally, finally, you can see everything that they do
Right.
because you're going to have so much more faith in them.
Exactly.
you
Yes.
know and I truly believe that. I think they unfortunately were kind of all put in the same, I guess, banana basket with some people that were not well,
Right.
and shouldn't have been in their positions. So
Yeah.
yeah, in
The
terms of
whole,
recording, I
you
think
know,
it's a good thing. Mm,
yeah, the guilty by association thing really
mm,
sucks, right? Because
yeah.
we know, and I know that you know, and I know, and a lot of people who listen who know those who work in public safety. There's a lot of good people out there, but there's a few that that's why those things are put into place as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I believe in it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, you have these like couple decades and everything that you've been in public safety and all. Before we get into your transition to what you're doing now and such, um, what was it that really pushed you towards um, going into becoming going to be an EMT?
Oh, I thought to myself, like, forever I never became an EMT because I was like, oh no, I'm a sympathetic puker.
I
Nope.
see, you know what? I if I see someone gag, I might gag as well. So I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. And I don't remember which fireman I worked with at the time. I was working for an agency that had everyone in the same building, fire department, police department, everybody. And I remember which fireman at the time said this, but he was like, oh yeah, so am I. Yeah, so is this person, that person, that person. And I was like, well then how are you doing it? And they were like, oh, I just say you puke, I puke.
Oh, well, wait, that works.
So that's what every time I got at that, I've never actually had a puker in an ambulance. Just I mean, it's my per diem job, so it wasn't like I've done a lot with EMS, but
Yeah.
um but I've done some stuff, like, so, but I've never had a puker. So I was always like, you puke, I puke.
Well, you
You
put that
decide.
out there in the universe, so
You decide if you want to see me puke.
right.
Right? Like,
Yeah. Like, "Do you wanna puke, buddy?" I mean, I guess
not,
we
not that they can control it, but I was just like, hey,
that's
I
true.
don't know. Hey, a puke is not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, can I see your arm so I can do your blood pressure? Make sure you're
Oh,
not having a stroke. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it passes the time as well. I mean, you're there, and I love your outlook on all of this. This is great.
oh yeah.
This has been good.
I've, you know,
So
I have to be fair, my outlook
yeah,
on public safety has morphed a lot since I left. It's hard to stay in public safety and not be jaded by something. And I think I've done a lot of healing from it. And I think I've also looked back at myself and I've said, my outlook did need to change. I did
Mhm.
not treat some people well, and I was not kind all the time. And those are things that I've worked on and I've really tried to pull back from, engaging in things that I knew that were going to come back and kind of hit me in the face.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there I owe an apology to, trust me, it came back to me tenfold, I promise. So I apologize.
And that was gonna be one of the next questions as well, is just like, how do you feel like the profession has kinda changed you?
Oh,
It was
that's
kind of a loaded question, right? Like, there's many different ways that you can go with
yeah,
that, like,
yeah. Well,
for go ahead.
I think what really changed me was the shift work. I think
Mhm.
was the part that really um I hold on to a lot of guilt from having a child and having to work shift work and not being there for him while I was working. And so that's something that initiated my changing career was the shift work. I mean, I almost got mandated during a birthday party, like his birthday party that I was throwing, and I was almost ordered in to work. And I had a coworker save me. Thank you, Jody. And thank you to the sergeant Dana for filling it. So like I still remember these things because
Right.
that is a moment of I'm abandoning my child. Like I'm abandoning my child due to my job and what is more important. And I got to a place where that did change me, where I said, in the beginning, I was a workaholic. I would take every shift. I'd do EMS. I had 4 jobs. I've worked for like 5 different agencies in 911. I would be per diem here, there, and there, just in case they needed somebody to pick up a shift. And like I just drowned myself in work. And I loved it and I was good at it. So I felt like I was welcome, and that's a
Yeah.
wonderful feeling, especially as a kid growing up with ADHD. I'm like the oddball, like I got picked on a little bit. And I never really took care of myself well when I was growing up. So like I know that when I came into public safety, I mean, I would run into guys I went to high school with that hadn't seen me in 10 years, and I would be on like I'd be on EMS call, and they'd be like, "Who are you? What? Where's are you Deb? Like from high school? The same one? Like Abby?" Right? And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I know. I have long hair now, and I'm pretty. I know. I'm sorry." Like,
Right. You had your
well,
chance.
yes. I'm so I'm sorry that you were mean to me. Yes.
Yeah.
So, no, but so I think, like, all of that, kind of formed me when I had my son. I think everything changed for me, and my priorities changed a lot. And I still think that I've always lived a life of service. Like, I believe in a life of service. I believe in improving our communities. I think I've been talking to people on the worst days of their lives for my entire life, like, or adult life anyway. And I think that that's probably, it gave me so much life experience to be able to be a really good therapist. And I say I'm a good therapist because my clients tell me I'm a good therapist. I look back at my clients and I'm like, "Are you sure this
Right.
works?" Like,
I know
um,
you're paying me, but you don't have to just
I
tell me,
know.
right?
And sometimes I'm like, "It's okay, you don't need to pay." And they're like, "That's ridiculous." And I'm like, You're right, it is ridiculous. I don't know why I said that." Little imposter syndrome. But yeah, I think that that kind of morphed me into a person that people ask me questions about everything. They're like, "Deb, you're a doctor. I'm not a doctor, right?" And they're like, "You know about this, and this. Can you answer this question for me?" And I usually can, just because I have so much, like, so many different angles of information that, and as a dispatcher, you have to know all of it.
Right.
You have
Yeah.
to know fire, police, EMS. You have to know the water systems in the town. You have to know. In our town,
Yeah,
we
the
have, like,
trains, like everything.
the military bases, the trains, the nuclear plant, the pharmaceutical companies. Like, there's all kinds of different things that you have to learn as a dispatcher, right? And so it does give you that wealth of life experience. I think that's, again, that's what makes me. I don't know. Sometimes I don't feel like an adult, but if I am an adult, that's probably what made it happen. Yeah.
Well, and I love how you mention as well that all of this experience has helped to where with what you're doing now as a clinician and everything. So let's go into this portion of it as we're kind of getting close to the wrap up of this
Hmm.
episode, which has been amazing to have you on here. I could
Oh,
talk to
thank
you
you.
for
Thank you.
hours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's,
um,
well, I mean, I could talk back for hours, so there we go.
there you
I'll
go.
just set a time limit. Somebody put a dinger on or something.
So how did you what was your thought process, I guess, making this, transition into being a clinician and everything, but also having being able to use all of your life experience and everything that's come into it to be like what your clients and everything are saying is just a really good at what you do.
Yeah, I think just having, like, information about certain things, so it's just like one of those people, like, I'm one of those people that collects a lot of information about little silly things, but also, like, the way that I went with my education and being able to, like, really align with my type, like, there's a theory called multiple intelligence, the theory of multiple intelligence, and so my intelligence is interpersonal and intrapersonal, meaning, like, I have both where I know how I feel, and therefore, I know I can pretty much tell how other people feel, and I can
Mhm.
kind of predict what's going on for them. Safely. And so I think it really just aligned in a way that was like, not only do I have all this common sense, because you have to have common sense to work in dispatch, you have to have common sense to work in any kind of law enforcement. You have to be able to put the bricks together in front of you immediately, right?
Right.
So immediately, like, so, and like with less time, because they're going to time everything that you do, like everything
Exactly.
is written down, especially like in EMS, like, and the timestamps for, like, let's say foot pursuits, right? Or tracks, canine tracks, like, and it's all logged, like, so I think that everything just kind of like came together and formed me. I remember signing up for my master's degree. And my school was amazing. I went to SNHU. If you're looking for a degree, I can't endorse them enough. They are a nonprofit school. It's probably the most affordable, on top of they are so organized. And so all the assignments in every single class have the same exact days that they're due. So you are never lost, right? Like, you're always like, Thursday or Sunday, do I have something due? So they're very good at that. So I just, when I signed up for my master's degree, I said to her, I said, well, I'm doing a complete career change. This has nothing, I'm going to start totally over. And as I was a dispatcher and an EMT, and I don't know that, like, I'm going to have to completely change my career. She said, never discount that. Never. You have more life experience and more wherewithal than most people on the planet. And that's what people need when they're talking to someone.
I love that.
You know, that was an advisor that said that to me. So I mean, it's like when you put yourself out there and you can be vulnerable to someone, they will likely give you help with it. And that's something that was a hard lesson.
I I kind of feel like it also, in that moment also helped realize that you're going into the right thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hearing that and also let's really quick talk about, the importance of seeing a therapist and the importance of
Mhm.
being able to trust your therapist, but also with suicidal thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah, I did wanna talk about this just because I can't, like, I feel it is so important to make sure that people really understand what happens when you go to see a therapist, and
Mhm.
how suicidal thoughts present to us. Okay, so just to, and like, I know my credentials are here and everything. However, like, I just want to say out loud, like, I have a bachelor's in psychology, minor in sociology and criminal justice. I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling. I completed an intensive outpatient program. I worked there. I did mobile crisis for almost 2 years, and I've been an outpatient for a couple of years too now, and I work with children in the middle school right now. But um, I definitely see there's like some things that are going on between public safety and therapy that I really want to address nationally, and
Mhm.
I plan to do that. But I have a lot on my plate right now. So but what I'm going to say is, and this is so important, is that you understand that if you tell a therapist that you are having suicidal thoughts, I'm thinking about killing myself. I am thinking I'm terrified of hurting myself. I am scared. I am I keep thinking that there's nothing left for me. I keep thinking I don't want to exist. I I don't want to wake up. If there's an easy button I could hit it and not wake up, I would do it. We are trained as therapists much differently than public safety is trained. And I know that you have the wherewithal to say to someone, I think you need to go to the hospital, when someone says that to you, right? As a dispatcher, as a law enforcement officer, as a fireman, as a EMT, like, you are going to pick up on that and say, red flag, we got to make sure that they're safe, right? That's risk. However, when it comes to you, your thoughts, your friends, your coworkers, please understand that we look at these thoughts and we say, well, yeah, those are peaceful thoughts, right? I think your body's probably looking for peace, right? Instead of this do all end all event, right? And we start to weed through the thoughts and we say, okay, tell me about the content. Like how often are you thinking about it and things like that. We ask a lot of questions, and I don't dare have time for that, but like on this podcast. But
Yeah.
please understand that it is so unlikely for me to send someone to the hospital. I've actually never sent someone to the hospital without without agreeing that they needed to go in outpatient therapy at all. I've never had to do it because I see this as you are responding to events in your life that are tragic, sad, and traumatic. Of course, you're going to be sad. Of course, you want to hide. Of course, you do. And that's human. And we really have to stop stigmatizing, saying, I don't want to exist. I'm giving up. I want to give up. Right. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I've had those thoughts before. Absolutely. I was terrified to tell my therapist. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him for probably 6 months. And when I did finally tell him, he said to me, why didn't you tell me? And I said, well, I was afraid you were going to send me to the hospital and I would have to see everybody I knew. And he said, I deserve a little more credit than that. Like I did go to school for a long time. Like I'm a little insulted right now, So,
Yeah.
and so I was like, really? So that people understand, therapists have a higher level of understanding of risk assessment than everything that you know in public safety, right? And so that's our master's degree. That's a 63, 64 credit degree, which means 2.5 years with an additional 800 hours of experience in clinical work before we can even graduate. And then we have to do another 3,000 to 5,000 to 8,000 hours, depending on what state you're in, to be fully licensed to make a decision on whether or not we think you can go to the hospital. So we're talking 5 years of experience before I can actually say to you, I believe you need to go. Right. So that's the other thing when it comes to like working with law enforcement in the field in mobile crisis. They're looking at us going, well, what do you think? Like that's my job is I'm a therapist or a LPC, which is about the same line as the LCSWs and the LMFTs, right? So their like conference with us like on the scene when we're working a mobile crisis, we're saying, well, like here's my expertise and this is what I see. And they see it and they go, okay, well, if that's what you see, then we're going to be more comfortable with letting them stay home. And I think that it's really important they understand many therapists, some therapists are really nervous with suicidality. Very you know, they don't
Right.
want to risk you being at risk.
Right.
And that therapist really wants to take care of you. So we have to give them credit for that. However, I think that there are other therapists out there that are like, okay, so I know that that's scary, but let's get right into those thoughts and those feelings. How long have they been there? How often are they? Are they coming and going? What's the content in them? Is there a plan, intent, and all of those things? This is not the Columbia Suicide Scale that we're doing with people when we are really in a session, in a therapy session, having that conversation with our clients that trust us very much. Okay. So a Columbia Suicide Scale is for like a risk assessment that we do kind of like generically. I mean, it's like very, many people know it and they know the answers right away and they know what to say. I don't think that's going to work for anyone in law enforcement. It's not going to work for anybody in that's my theory. That's not proven, but I just don't think it's going to work because what's going to happen is they're going to know what you're asking them and why, and they're going to deny it no matter what. Whereas if I can normalize it and validate, hey, like that was really tragic for you. I'm sure it's scary. And I'm sure that you're having these thoughts. Let's talk about the peace around it, because that's what your body's really looking for. It's peace. It just can't find it that way, and that's where it gets confusing for people. So this is definitely something that I think is important that you see a therapist about because we are not just going to send you to the hospital. That's not what we do.
Right. So I've got 2 questions here as we're going into the wrap up of this, especially with what you just said, all of this. This
Yeah.
first question, do you feel like if a lot more folks in public safety, especially in public safety, because you see it a lot in the news and on social media, do you feel like if people felt that they could trust their therapist with sharing some of these suicidal thoughts, that, I mean, if it was put out there that more people would actually speak and open up versus what we see where it's a lot of police officers, a lot of people in public safety who just they end up
Shutting down.
shutting down and taking their lives because they
Mhm.
were afraid that they would lose their job, or they were afraid that they would lose their, retirement, or things like that.
Right.
Do you kind of feel like if we, as we're talking with this stigma, we smash that stigma, as it's said, right? Or normalize
Mm,
trusting our therapist and being open, that maybe that would, bring that number down
mm,
annually. Is it
mhm.
possible? Is
I
it
I hope
possible?
I hope. One thing I will say immediately is the only thing I'm absolutely positive of is that I don't know everything at all,
Mhm.
and no one does. So we learn and we grow, and that's what it takes to be a clinician to work in mental health. You commit to a lifetime of learning. So we are constantly updating, and that's a CEU, right? Like that's like everybody has to have training every year, you know.
Right.
So but our trainings are really more like what we're interested in and what we're focusing on. And so like when we go into a training, it's not because we're forced to, it's because we picked it and we're like, oh, I'm gonna learn about that for 3 days, like so we get excited about it. So just understanding that first, making a realistic safety plan is the most important thing you can do with your therapist, and like just making sure a safety plan is like when we say, what are your coping skills? Who can you call? What are you thinking? Like where like, who can you be around that picks up your mood? What can you do? Where can you go to like really take your mind off of things? How can you reset your nervous system,
Mhm.
right? And teach your body you are safe. You don't need to think about this and you can move forward with life, right? And those safety plans really need to be adjusted because at the end of the safety plan, every safety plan at the end of it has this thing called, okay, there's who are you going to call, right? Like, so if you're upset, you want to talk to somebody, it's the people that you trust, right? You call. But then it says, and then you can call 911 and go to the hospital. And so this is where we need to start paying attention as clinicians. We need to make sure that we are checking with the person that we're making that safety plan with, and we're saying, um, do you have someone you trust well enough to be like your buddy in making sure that if you feel this way, you don't need to tell them what you're feeling, you don't need to say anything other than, "We're gonna activate the plan," okay? And the plan is they're gonna take you to maybe a hospital out of state if it's, close enough, wherever you choose in advance that you want to go to be safe. If we are then making that plan in advance, we are alleviating their need to disregard the entire plan because they can't go to the hospital anyway. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we get to the end of a plan and we say, if do all end all, you got to call 911, and that police officer, that fireman looks at me and is like, sure, they're not going to call 911
Right. Yeah.
realistically. And I'm sorry, did I get off track? Were you asking me something else? I'm sorry.
No, 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 you're
I
good.
just
You're
want to make
yeah,
sure.
everything
Okay.
that you're saying. Yeah, no, no,
Okay,
no.
good.
This is
Yeah.
good.
I just want to say I'm hoping to, when I have time, develop a training program, hopefully for peer support, because I think that peer support needs to be in touch with making that, and it's not a contract for safety because you have to be a clinician to do a contract for safety. And
Mhm.
I'll say that again, you can't be an EMT, a fireman, or a police officer and make a contract for safety, meaning a safety plan. That is a clinician level, okay? But if you if I can help to train peer support to make this plan with people that's just like, hey, buddy system, okay? Like we have to check in with each other. Buddy check. I think there's like hashtag buddy check they're doing now, which is great.
Yeah, I think
Like
yeah, something to
yeah,
that effect, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's great. And just making sure that this is already in place because we know that at times life is hard and we are all trying to get through it. And it's normal to feel sad about it. It's normal, right? But to let that sadness come and go, feel it and let it go, that's a skill, right? So that's
Yeah.
something that is worked on with a therapist, you know? Sometimes it takes a little while to find your person in therapy. You might have had an experience with a therapist that was god awful. Please don't give up on us all. We're out here, we're kinda some of us are
Right.
out here that we're like, we're cool, okay? Like, please don't judge us the way that someone else treated you. Like so, yeah, that's I think that's the most important is that you don't give up if you meet with somebody that you are kind of put off by and they seem a little stuffy or you're just not that's not your jive, then find someone else.
I love that. Yeah, it's and agreed. Because I have a lot of friends that go to therapy as well, and they've mentioned the same thing. Like if you don't, if this person isn't right, don't give up. That's not the end all be all. There are other folks out there, and it might just take a little time. Now
Yeah.
we're wrapping this up here, this episode, and I've got one last question for you, and this is for you specifically.
Mhm.
If you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now, everything that you've been through, all of these couple decades of experience, what you're doing now as a clinician as well. But if you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning of this journey, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, I know exactly what I would say. It's kind of hilarious. Do not date firemen. Do not date firemen. That would be the first thing. And then I think the second thing would be um, to put space in between myself and my emotional reactions to people. Just with like, and not even on 911 or dealing with the public. I was never emotional with them because they're
Mhm.
not. I don't know them personally, but
Right.
I would often find myself responding emotionally. It's an ADHD thing. Before I really had time to think about something, and it kind of made me look bad in the end. And then now I regret that. I regret any time that I shared something that was not my business to share. I regret that. And I think I would have said that to myself then. And like in fairness, I think I knew then that I shouldn't, but there was something else that was happening. And I think it's like this dynamic in public safety where there's a lot of competition and
Mhm.
a lot of there's not like I mean there seems like there's camaraderie, right? So like it's kind of like a no one picks on my brother but me type of thing, right? So
Right. Yeah.
so
That's a
right,
good way to put it.
if
Yeah.
you mess with anybody in dispatch, I like any dispatcher anywhere, I will give you a very bad look. But
Right.
if you but if they messed with me, I'll be the first person to be like, you have no idea what you're doing. Like so it's like just stepping back from that and being like everybody has different life experiences and you can learn from every single person, right? So I think another thing I'd probably say to myself is every time you meet someone, think, how can you help that person? Because eventually they'll want to help you too. And I do think that automatically already, but I never thought about coworkers, and really helping my coworkers with anything, really. And I did help them, don't get me wrong, but when I first met them, or even not even coworkers, but just there's people in public safety that you don't work with, and they're
Mhm.
always there, you know. So just how can I help that person? So yeah, I think that's probably. I mean, there's like a lot. I feel like.
But those are good ones right there, especially that last one, because I think that's a big problem in a lot of centers. Things are changing, but there's still a problem where there are some folks that they don't they don't communicate. We're the best at communications, but when it comes to communicating with each other, we don't always do that. And some of those folks, whether they be new or they've been there for a little while, they end up leaving because they don't feel like they're a part of this family. They don't feel that
Right.
camaraderie. There's a
They
lot
don't
of
feel
different
protected.
things.
Hmm.
Right. And they just decide, well, I'm just going to go ahead and split, or I'm going to go somewhere else that actually does appreciate me. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the hard things. So we can bridge that gap and have that communication. And I think it would change a lot of things.
Yeah,
It
I
really
think
would.
like really looking at everyone in your center as what are their strengths, you know,
Exactly.
because I could say about the people that I worked with for 10 years, one of them, he was a little condescending, but at the same time, he's the guy that would tell you the crack on the shutter. Like he could tell you anything about geography in that town, and that is
Yeah.
an invaluable resource. That is so amazing to have in a dispatch center. Is
Exactly.
someone that literally played in their backyard for his entire life, like the entire thing, so
Yes.
so everyone has their strengths. So really looking at that and then kind of like being a sponge and just learning from everyone, being open to learning and having that growth mindset where you're training your brain to always be ready for like, oh, really? That's cool. I didn't know that. Oh, tell me more. Tell me more.
Right.
Tell me
Yeah.
more. Tell me more. Yeah.
This has been an awesome episode. This has been excellent. Thank you so very much for everything that you do. Your decades of experience, your service, and what you do now, especially. Thank you so much. This has been awesome to have you on, and I'm looking forward to having you on the Dispatchers Roundtable as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time and and letting me especially get to the stuff with helping with people to be more comfortable with therapists. I think there's a gap that needs to be bridged there, and I'm hoping to spend part of my career bridging the gap. So
I
that
love it.
Yeah, so that way they feel more comfortable. So, and if anyone has any questions about therapy, where do they find a therapist? I'm happy to help. Just reach out to me, LinkedIn, or I don't know. I'm all the things, I guess. So,
Perfect. I was
yeah,
actually going to ask you that next.
yeah,
So where
yeah,
can people find you? But LinkedIn, right there.
yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. And as you know, I don't check that very often. I'm doing some like kind of sporadic TikToks. Usually my name is like ADH Deb or ADH Debbie. So because I have ADHD.
I like
so
that.
it's just like,
That's a good way to do that. To play
it
on
flows.
on.
Well, it was
Yeah.
it was getting a little ridiculous. I was writing ADHD Debbie, and I was like, why did I put two D's?
Right. It's
Wait,
redundant. Like why?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So you can find me pretty much anywhere, it, that way. And I'm happy to help, and I'm happy to answer questions and just point you to the right direction. Just, sometimes I forget my phone exists for 6 or 7 hours. So be patient with me.
Well, again, this has been awesome, and
Thank you so
I
much. It's really been nice to like actually just have a conversation flow and, feel like people are going to be able to be helped by it.
this is they are.
Mm,
I know it.
good.
This is gonna go well. Your story and
Mm,
everything, and I'll be right back here with you in just a moment because I know you have to leave. So I'll be right
mhm,
back here with you in just a moment.
mm,
And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest in the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us all over social media, and you can simply go to the link that's on the screen, or for those who are listening on your favorite podcasting app, you can go to links, and that's with two eyes. That's links with two eyes.co/WTT podcast. You'll find all of my information there, where you can become a supporter, where you can schedule an episode, and I would love to have you on the podcast. This can be seen on, let's see, it can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X, LinkedIn Live. And you can listen 24/7 to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you in the next one. According to the IAED, the average 911 call center is understaffed by 30%. This nationwide staffing crisis, combined with rising call volumes, is creating an environment that makes one of the toughest jobs on earth even tougher. As next-generation data and tools emerge, it's crucial that vendors build with these challenges in mind, not just meeting the needs of the telecommunicator, but helping to mitigate challenges presented by staffing shortages. That's why Prepared Built Assist, a platform that's been called a game changer by users and the first ever assistive 911 platform. Prepared Assist processes call audio to give you a live transcript, while AI pulls insights from the call, enabling you to two-click copy and paste key information like addresses, suspect descriptions, and more directly into CAD. Prepared Assist also translates text and audio so that you can communicate with non-English callers without an interpreter. Speaking of text, Assist gives you the ability to send outbound text to callers, so you can cut down the time you spend on 911 hangups and communicate with anyone that can't speak. All of these tools are centralized on a single screen, so you don't have to look in a million places to find all the right information or significantly alter your workflow when you adopt the platform. Prepared Assist is built for 911. Visit prepared911.com/assist to learn more and see the platform